Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Hey, I'm Kathy. Let me tell you about the time I thought I'd found the love of my life. It feels like forever ago, but it all started back in college. College. Those days were something special. I still remember seeing Ben for the first time. It was at this painfully awkward freshman mixer that I'd only gone to because my roommate insisted. I was ready to make my escape when I spotted him. This guy with the most ridiculous but charming grin and these incredible blue eyes. I don't know why, but something about his energy just pulled me in, and he walked right up to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Before I knew it, we were deep in conversation, laughing like we'd known each other forever. I totally forgot about sneaking out. By the end of the night, I was certain I'd made a friend for life. From then on, we were inseparable. Nights turned into early mornings as we crammed for exams, pored over textbooks, and talked endlessly about life. I wanted to become a doctor, and Ben, well, he wasn't sure what his future held, but that didn't stop him from being my biggest cheerleader. He'd listen to me go on about organic chemistry, my internship applications, even obscure medical facts, as if they were riveting stories. It was rare to find someone so interested in who I wanted to be, and Ben made it seem like nothing could be more interesting than my dreams. But it wasn't all about ambition and study sessions. We found plenty of ways to have fun, too. Endless movie marathons, spontaneous road trips, silly games we'd make up when we were procrastinating, and nights out that made for legendary stories. He'd pull me out of my comfort zone, and I'd bring out this quieter, more thoughtful side of him. It was like we balanced each other perfectly, and for a long time. I thought he might just be the person I'd spend my life with. Weekends were our time to explore the city, tasting the thrill of new restaurants we could barely afford on our student budgets and hopping from one party to the next. Ben had this way of making even the smallest, most ordinary moments feel special, like they were an adventure all their own. There's one day in particular that still stands out, and it's so vivid I can practically see it all again. We were absolutely broke. It was our 6-month anniversary, and he knew I was secretly hoping we'd do something to mark it. So, instead of going out, Ben set up a little picnic in his dorm room. He'd somehow managed to borrow a tablecloth from the dining hall, made us PB&J sandwiches, and even scored a bottle of cheap wine. I remember laughing when I saw it all, but honestly, it was perfect. That little picnic showed me how Ben could turn any situation into something meaningful. As time went on, things naturally got more serious between us. We'd talk about our future together, tossing around plans, imagining what our lives would look like down the line. That's when Ben made a decision that I never saw coming. He told me he was going to drop out of college to work full-time so that I could focus on my studies. I argued at first, told him it was crazy. I mean, who sacrifices like that? But Ben wouldn't budge. He said he believed in my dreams, that he wanted me to go after them without the stress of juggling work and study. Part of me was thrilled by his dedication. It made me feel so deeply loved. Ben started working 2 jobs, mornings at a local coffee shop and evenings at a call center. He'd come home completely wiped, but somehow, he never complained. Instead, he'd sit with me, asking about my classes, quizzing me on flashcards, and making sure I was eating enough. He'd even bring home day-old pastries from the coffee shop so I'd have a snack between classes. Looking back, I realized just how much I took for granted, how deeply he cared and how selflessly he showed it in every little thing he did. It was a love that was simple and rare, and I'll never forget it. Ben's sacrifice meant everything to me, and I couldn't help but feel so incredibly proud of him. I'd brag to my friends all the time about how supportive and selfless my boyfriend was, and they'd roll their eyes and tease me, saying I'd found myself a keeper. And honestly, I believed them. I truly thought I'd hit the jackpot. I was on track to graduate with honors, already setting my sights on top medical schools, and right beside me was this amazing guy who believed in me more fiercely than anyone ever had. Life felt pretty perfect, like all the pieces were falling exactly into place. I felt invincible, like Ben and I could take on the world together. Of course, life has a funny way of taking twists and turns when you least expect it, but that's a story for another time. Back then, college me was head over heels in love, and I couldn't imagine any future that didn't have Ben in it. To me, he was my rock, my partner, and the reason I could dream so big. I thought we were unbreakable. Now let's check Ben's side of the story. Hey there, I'm Ben. You know, when you're young and in love, you feel like you can conquer the world. That's exactly how it was with me and Kathy. From the moment we met in college, I knew she was something else. She had this fire, this unstoppable drive to become a doctor, and watching her go after her dreams was inspiring. I might not have known what I wanted back then, but I knew I wanted to be there for her, to be the wind beneath her wings. When I decided to drop out of college so I could support Kathy full-time, my parents thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe they were right, but it felt like the right thing to do. I dove headfirst into 2 jobs, juggling morning shifts at a coffee shop and evenings at a call center. It was exhausting, but every time I'd come home and see Kathy buried in her books, the determination in her eyes made it all worth it. It gave me the push I needed to keep going. Eventually, I landed a more stable gig as a customer service exec at an MNC. The pay was better, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe. With my first bonus, I bought Kathy a real desk and a fancy ergonomic chair. She cried when she saw it, happy tears. She said it made her feel like a real med student, and in that moment, every ounce of effort felt like it had paid off. As Kathy powered through her undergrad, I focused on learning in my own way. I took free online courses in personal finance, learned to budget down to the last cent, and even dabbled in basic coding. If I couldn't be in school, I figured I'd still find ways to grow. When she got accepted into medical school, it was like we'd won the lottery. All those long hours and late-night pep talks had led to this incredible moment. I never felt prouder of her, or of us. In that moment, everything felt possible. I still remember that moment like it was yesterday, Kathy jumping into my arms, both of us laughing and crying with joy. It was surreal, one of those moments you never forget. But reality crept in fast. Her dream school was in another state. It didn't matter to me, though. Without a second thought, I told her, where you go, I go. Moving was tougher than I'd expected. I had to leave my job, say goodbye to the few close friends I'd managed to hold on to. But watching Kathy's face light up as we packed up our lives was worth it. I knew how much this meant to her, and seeing her that excited made everything feel right. In our new city, I hit the ground running and landed a job at another call center within a week. It wasn't glamorous, but it covered the bills. Our new apartment was tiny, smaller than our last place and in a rougher part of town, but we made it work. On my days off, I'd explore the city, scouting out the best cheap eats, free museums, and anything that would help us save while still allowing us to enjoy life. Med school was intense, way more grueling than either of us had imagined. There were nights she'd come home on the verge of quitting, completely drained. Those were the times I'd step up, trying to make things a little easier. I'd run her a bath, make her favorite comfort food, and just let her vent. I became a master of flashcards, even if half the words sounded like another language. I won't lie, there were moments when it was hard. We were both tired, often stressed, and I'd be lying if I said there weren't times I felt like I was running on empty. But every time I saw her resilience, her drive, it reminded me why I was doing it. We were a team, and that's what kept me going. Watching Kathy grow, seeing her make new friends, hearing her talk passionately about things I didn't always understand. It was incredible, but sometimes I felt like I was standing on the sidelines. There were moments when I wondered if I was getting left behind. But then, she'd look at me with those eyes filled with love and gratitude, and all my doubts would fade. It was in those quiet looks and small gestures that I remembered why I was doing this. We were in it together. One night, after a particularly grueling week for both of us, Kathy turned to me and said, "I couldn't do this without you, Ben. You're my rock." That simple sentence hit me deeply. In that moment, every sacrifice, every long day, and late night felt like it had a purpose. Supporting her wasn't a burden. It was my way of being part of her journey, part of something bigger. Looking back now, I can see that I became so focused on supporting Kathy's dreams that I lost sight of my own. But that's love, isn't it? Sometimes, your partner's dreams become your dreams, and you don't even realize it. For a long time, that was enough. I was content knowing I was helping her become the person she'd always wanted to be, and in doing so, I became a stronger, more resilient person myself. Now let's check the story from Kathy's side. Hey, it's Kathy again. You know that saying, when one door closes, another opens? Well, when I closed that door on Ben, it was like stepping into a brand new world. A world where I could finally be me. Not just the med student or the girlfriend, but the real me, the version I'd always imagined. At first, there was this small pang of guilt. Ben had been there through every late-night study session, every breakdown, and every milestone. But I had worked my butt off to get here, and I realized I deserved this. My paycheck? It became my ticket to freedom. No more counting pennies or feeling guilty over every little splurge. I started treating myself to things I'd only dreamed of before. Designer clothes, dinners in trendy places, and weekend getaways with the girls. It felt intoxicating. I remember one night, some friends and I decided on a spontaneous trip to Vegas. In the past, I would have agonized over the expense, wondering what Ben would say, calculating every dollar. But now, I didn't have to ask anyone or think twice. I just went. It was liberating to finally be in control, to live for myself without holding back. It was my time to shine, and for the first time, I felt like I could actually enjoy everything I'd worked so hard to achieve. I just booked the ticket, packed my bags, and took off. Vegas was everything I had fantasized about. A luxurious suite, nights that blurred into mornings, and hitting the hottest clubs with my friends. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly living, not just existing within someone else's plans or expectations. It was exhilarating. And then there was Dr. Brown, tall, distinguished, with salt and pepper hair, and that quiet confidence that only comes from years of success. He took an interest in my career, offering to mentor me. At least, that's how it began. I won't lie, the affair with Dr. Brown was thrilling in a way I hadn't anticipated. Stolen moments in on-call rooms, hushed phone calls, secret dinners at hidden-away restaurants. He got me, understood my ambition and drive in a way Ben never had. With him, I didn't have to hold back, dumb myself down, or feel guilty for my success. Yes, he was married, but I convinced myself it wasn't serious, that we were just two adults enjoying each other's company, living in the moment. Besides, I was young, successful, and for the first time, truly free. I told myself I deserved to explore my options. My friends from med school became my new family, rallying around me, celebrating my accomplishments, and encouraging me to embrace this new life. For the first time, I felt like I was surrounded by people who understood me, and I was ready to take on the world on my terms. We'd go out for girls' nights that somehow turned into weekend adventures, packed with spa days, shopping sprees, and bottomless brunches. It was like living in the scenes of a rom-com, the carefree, glamorous life I'd always seen in movies but never thought I'd experience myself. And in those moments, it felt amazing. I was the star of my own story for the first time, finally free from the shadow of being just the supportive girlfriend. I felt invincible. Looking back, I can see now just how shallow that all was. But back then, I was swept up in the thrill of it. And yet, you know that old saying about karma? Turns out, it's as real as it gets. All those nights of living my best life would soon catch up with me in ways I never expected. I had no idea that my picture-perfect world was built on a shaky foundation, like a house of cards, just waiting for a gust of reality to bring it crashing down. And when the winds of change finally blew, they left me facing a truth I wasn't ready to see. It started innocently enough. Dr. Brown had taken me under his wing, offering career advice, helping me navigate the grueling hours and pressures of med school. At first, I saw him as just a mentor, a confidant in a world that Ben could never fully understand. He would listen, truly listen, in a way that made me feel seen, understood, like he knew exactly what I was going through. And that magnetic pull? It only grew stronger each time we stole a quiet moment together, each time he whispered words of admiration. The first time it happened, it was late. We'd stayed behind after a shift, both of us exhausted but buzzing from a successful case. I don't know what came over me. It was a mix of adrenaline and the comfort he offered. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were caught up in each other. After that, there was no going back. Every stolen glance, every secret meeting, it became this dangerous thrill that I couldn't resist. But then, one night, I came home, my mind still spinning from another one of those clandestine dinners. The apartment was dark and eerily quiet. I called out Ben's name, but there was no answer. My stomach dropped as I noticed the emptiness. The things we'd gathered together, the little mementos of our life, gone. Everything gone. On the table was a small piece of paper and an envelope with my name scrawled in his handwriting. With shaky hands, I opened the note, my heart racing. It simply read, "I'm taking everything back. You're on your own now. Hopefully, your new family will back you up." I stood there, numb, reading his words over and over, feeling the weight of what I'd done finally crashing down on me. The apartment felt colder, emptier. And for the first time, I felt the loneliness creeping in, the realization that I was truly, irrevocably, alone. Let's check Ben's side now. I still remember the moment I decided to cut Kathy out of my life. It was a bittersweet, gut-wrenching decision, but one that I knew I had to make. Reading her phone messages, seeing the reality of what had happened, it was like a light bulb went off. I had sacrificed so much for her dreams, only to be betrayed by someone I had loved so deeply. I felt a mixture of heartbreak and relief. It was time to take back control of my life. In those first few months, I threw myself into my career. I poured every ounce of energy into my job at the MNC, determined to rise above the pain. Long hours became the norm, but the more I worked, the more I found myself thriving. Promotions followed promotions. I took on new responsibilities, sought out mentorship, and focused on expanding my skill set. The climb wasn't easy, but I was fueled by a newfound sense of purpose. Kathy tried to reach out, at first with texts and calls, then more desperate attempts. I would see her name pop up on my phone, and I'd feel that old familiar ache, but I knew better. I had to shut her down, protect what little was left of my heart. I remember one particular conversation. She caught me off guard at a coffee shop. She looked so different, older, more tired, and I could see the cracks in her facade. She tried to explain, to pull me back into her world, but I couldn't. I just shook my head, told her that I'd moved on, and that it was best we stayed apart. I didn't want to revisit the past. I needed to focus on my future. Fast forward 5 years, and I can confidently say I've built a life I'm proud of. I'm happily married to someone who supports me just as I support her. We have a beautiful daughter who brings so much joy to our lives. I still think of Kathy occasionally, but it's more like a fleeting thought now, an echo of what was, a reminder of how far I've come. Every time I look at my wife and our little girl, I feel a deep sense of gratitude for the path I chose. Life has its way of guiding us, and I'm thankful that I found my way back to happiness, even if it meant leaving Kathy behind. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.